I told you we don't want that there.
You know, I don't understand that at all. Of course I look, and the property was used for a parking lot. It's got a base that you would not believe of rock on it, which would serve my purposes great because I have some heavy stuff. And so as far as the school goes,
the microphone, please. Thank you.
as far as the school goes, it is near a school, but I don't have anything that's hazardous. I mean, I don't have, I have nothing that can hurt a child unless they were to get in the warehouse and something were to fall on them. And been in business for 30 years.
It would mess with transportation in and out because that's McKinley Street leads out to Telegraph Road. If you mess with that, that's exit for us to go in and out. Have you been up Telegraph Road?
My
all those
application
other places
has said that we won't use McKinley Street at all. We'll have two cuts for the property to the east, and two cuts for the property to the west. The property to the west would be the property I developed first. Last night, I'm concerned about what the community thinks, and I wanted to try to get a general idea of what folks might be thinking. So last night, I was on the property, and I can't see the neighborhood because of all the trees on the west property. I can't see the neighborhood for all the trees. You can't see any lights or anything from the neighborhood. It's blocked by the gully.
That's why you drive through it.
That's why you what?
You drive through it to look and see.
Drive through the gully?
The neighborhood.
Oh, I was
the neighborhood. They got streets that lead.
I was out on Paper Mill Road. Yeah. And looking back toward
just drive
so I did do my homework, and I am concerned. I don't know why you think I'm not concerned, but
you're not from here, and we are.
To follow up on some of the things that Alex was talking about, I'm director for the Center for Fair Housing here in Mobile, and he referenced two documents. One, the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, and the second was the city's consolidated plan for the next 5 years. And so Africatown is explicitly addressed in those plans. It's also identified as an impediment for the city of Mobile. So when we look at the continued issues of having residential areas rezoned to I-2, which is heavy industry, and although your business may not be producing anything of hazard to the community, quote unquote, because it is now zoned I-2, it is now open for anything. It's heavy industry. You could move in this year and be gone next year, and it is then I-2, then anything can come in. What the city has to be careful of is this. If you are going to affirmatively further fair housing, and because the city gets CDBG grant dollars, they get federal dollars from HUD, they have to comply with the plans they put in place. They have written these plans. They have been voted on and approved by the council. It is a conflict. It's going to be a conflict. And what the city is going to find themselves embroiled in is a review and possibly the pulling of federal dollars, because you cannot, this community has been inundated. And we know, although you, sir, may not have done it, and you, Councilman Manzi, were not in office at the time, it has been done by predecessors. And as the community is voicing, they are sick. There are people in the community who don't want this any further. So now the law is on their side when it says that, what is the city doing? And you can't say that you want to improve quality of life, and you can't say that you don't have a difference in the community, and I do think the difference. I would just like to see a warehouse set in the middle of Oakley District. You all may not fight it, but it would be standing room only. That would not be allowed to happen in the middle of that historic district. This community historically has been ignored. I got involved, I've been working with this community for almost 3 years because I sat at a meeting where a historical designation was put in place and you didn't talk to a single community member. You know how I know? Because they asked. And they said, well, how did you come up with this designation? Well, we went to the state. And nobody came to the community and asked them anything. And that has been the history of this community. So that's the passion and that's the frustration that you hear, is that they have been continually ignored. And they have been plagued with issues that have not helped this community, but they have helped this community. Now, as the director of the Fair Housing Center, I have to address this. If this goes forward with the city, it's gonna be an issue for the city because of the continued abuse of a community of color. And so this is why we have to think before we make this decision. And the planning commission needs to be informed. I've addressed the commission before when the zoning issues come up, and oftentimes the council is not informed. The planning commission is not informed. So I would say, get those documents to the planning commission. They need to see those. Get them to the council members. They should have them already. But they need to review those documents before they make this decision because it's going to open up a Pandora's box.
The only reason I'm doing this is because Teresa and I have been looking at something to improve our community. We are first on that list, and the grant that Mobile was awarded will be last on that list. The money for the blight to make these kinds of areas look better, like we are first on his list. We want to be first on the money list. That's $1.6 million. We want so much. Now I know you weren't here when the other guy was here.
That's right.
He had us on the bottom. Didn't get a nickel, not a dollar, not a cent. But I tell you what, that lady and I will have our eye on that 1.6. We're going to be sure we're on the top. Because usually when they get to us, you know what? We plan to help y'all. But you know what? We're out of money. We want to be on the top of this for sure. And our eyes are going to be on it. Okay?
The $1.6 million, those funds have will be utilized to hopefully revitalize communities that have serious and rampant blight. Communities have been neglected. So the Africatown Plateau community will be involved in that process, and the magazine pointed it. This community. But what I want to make certain that you also know, I've already talked. We passed an ordinance 3 weeks ago at the city council level that divided the revenue from the penny sales tax in 7 different ways. And each council district will get $3 million for the next 3 years. And the very first meeting to decide how those funds will be spent will be held at the First Hopewell Baptist Church here in you all's community. You all will be the very first ones that I talk with about what are the needs in this community. So that may have been, you all may have been on the bottom previously, but that's not the case anymore. That's not the case anymore.
Remote areas in other parts of Mobile County so that this project could be developed in those areas versus in residential communities where people may be forced to inhale air pollution, which could lead to more chronic illnesses that we're already dealing with, even though we have Healthy People 2020 in place?
That's a good question. Well, first, I have no pollution, so I'm really caught off guard with. I would have thought that the community would have said, "Hey, you build the building. It will. If anything happens across the street, the building will block. My buildings will block anything, from the." Whatever goes on across the street. I thought the community would welcome that because I have no pollution. But yes, ma'am, I've looked all over Mobile. This piece of property came available, and I purchased it. And I assure you, I did not purchase it because I said, well, this will be a easy place to go in and build a building. That's not my
statement, and I also have a question for Mr. Hoffman. Yes, Joel and I met with Mr. Beavers in his office Thursday, and the purpose of that meeting was to find out how, as a member of the Africatown CDC, we can go about implementing or adding those places that were left off of the designation, which was Hall's Bayou, Lewis Quarters, Kelly Hill. When we was told this in 2012 when the designation was given, even before it was done, it was told, get this part done and then you can come back and do the addition of those areas. Okay, that hadn't been done in 2 years. We went there to find out how we can get this process implemented and started where these areas can be included in the designation. That was the reason for meeting with him. And he did say, we're looking at Lewis Quarter. He did say that. But we also say, hey, we have a plan also. And we think and we know that Hall's Bayou should be top priority first, and then expand out to Lewis Quarters and those other areas. That's the area that we want. So Mr. Beavers gave us forms as to how we can initiate that process. But we didn't go down there to get told what we were going to do. We went down there to get information so we can go back and tell them, this is what we want to do. And this is what she and I done. Now, my question to Mr. Hoffman, you mentioned about this business in Crichton, and it was converted. Now, my question would be, if Mr. Collins decides to sell to me, do I still have a right to say, I want this to stay I-2? Or could the planning commission or the council come back and say, well, you know, we've done it before, we're just going to revert this back to R2. I'm at a loss whether or not me being a new property owner would be protected because I want the I-2.
With the Crichton example, I believe that was written as a legal agreement and a legal document. So once that business stops, it will legally revert back. So if that is the way this rezoning were to occur at the city council level, then that is what would also occur. You would own a large piece of residential property.
I guess the question that I would need, because it's a good point. Mr. Collins, would you, if the planning commission approves this rezoning, it goes to the city council, and we come to you and say, well, we will approve this contingent on you agreeing that if you were to sell the property, it would revert back to a residential use. Is that something you would agree to?
Well, I think this lady back here, it's the first I've heard of it, but I thought it was a great idea to, and I'm a businessman, I know nothing about the law, but if you were to put in a document that said that this property cannot be used for a tank farm, and I think that's what I'm hearing is everybody's concerned about, then that would stay with that property forever.
Well, I guess the question I'm asking, right now, the property is residential, and you're requesting that it be rezoned industrial so that you can use it to have a warehouse for your steel company. If your steel company were to close 10 years from now, 20 years from now, which before we agree to this, would you commit and would you agree that into some legal language that would say that if that business were to close, then whoever you would sell it to next would get that property as a residential piece of property?
Well, I don't, in thought, please listen to me. In thought, I don't have any problem with that whatsoever, but it would have to be worded properly because I have not introduced my son who's with me here tonight, but you know, if it changed hands, I would want to make sure that it could change hands and it could be passed on or whatever. So yes, sir, I think I know who you are. I think you know what the answer might be. Please. Oh, I'm finished because I have no knowledge of what I'm talking about.
So is that you would think about it?
It could be phrased properly to where it could be passed on to
his son.
Passed on to my heirs. I would sure consider it. Yes, sir.